line. So anytime you go to these big regattas, you'll have a line of boats kind of going out, like just like a starting line, out to the right side, out to the left side, right? And if you're not in that front line of boats, it's much harder to play the shifts because they all tack before you, then you're in bad air and it gets into all that. But we're just gonna say that this is right after the start, right? We're all theoretically in a line and we're thinking about what's our move. So we know it's all the way on the left and it's going to the right. I generally would think about either two things. One, if I'm super far away from this top boat, then I would tack and then tack back right underneath him, right? Like that. Maybe I'd lee bow him if I was close enough, if I had enough distance. Or I would tack and get all the way to the right. Because I know if I stay here, I'm losing distance, as opposed to if I was on this side, you're not really gaining much, but as it shifts to the right side, you gain until you're the first boat, right? Does that make sense to everybody?
So Caleb, if you're saying that's right after the starting line, did you put yourself in kind of a poor position because you've tracked the breeze by being that left-hand boat?
Exactly, yep.
So, yeah.
So the other answer to that is if this is right off the starting line, then you might want to think about starting all the way on the boat side, right? Eating everyone's breeze for a little bit, right? You're gonna lose a little bit at the start, but if you're confident enough in your speed, then you can just sit there and you'll get lifted up eventually. The other part of that starting point too is if you have a really good start and the breeze is all the way on the left, people are going to be falling into your hip. They're going to be fighting to stay out of your lee bow position. So if you do this perfectly, execute it perfectly, then you might be able to tack and cross the entire fleet because it's to the farthest left breeze, right? Or at least cross and tack and get to the middle of the fleet, right? That way you've beaten half the fleet or whatever, and then tack back and then take advantage of that right shift. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. Last thing I'll talk about, and then we'll hit the water, just for information overload's sake. And that will be ley lines. So I've talked a lot about ley lines in my debriefs, but I want to emphasize how important they are. Ley lines are our boundaries in sailing, right? If you want to think about the race course, then we have in this triangle to beat the other boats. Once we sail outside of this triangle, we are losing boats, right? So if you sail outside this triangle, you're sailing extra distance, more than you have to, and you're just hurting yourself, basically, right? If it's shifty like we had, like let's say like we're back in that oscillating breeze type, and you're all the way on the left, the breeze is coming sort of, if we had that position, let's say it's on the right but shifting to the left, right? So we know it's on the right breeze, coming more to the right. If you're on the left side of that, you're great, because you know that it's going to be shifting to the left side, and then when it comes all the way to the left, if you tack, you're going to be lifted to the mark. If you're on the right side, and let's say that you were all the way at the starboard ley line, right? You're way down here. You're thinking it's great because you just tacked, you're on a lift, you're doing really well, which is the right move for you, right? But because you've gotten on the ley line so early, now that it's shifted left, you have maybe a boat length or a tack to tack and then come back on the ley line and then tack back and go to the mark, right? As opposed to if you tacked down here, let's say you'd probably be here if you tacked right earlier, then you take advantage of this right shift, take it to the left side of the course because we know the breeze is shifting to the left, and then once the breeze gets to this point, tack, and then we sail a lifted angle to the mark, right? So if you what we call zero or hero, right? Did anyone ever heard that expression? Meaning that you go all the way to one side. Let's say you're this guy, right? You're either going to, if it was all the way on the left, right? You look like a hero because now it's shifting to the right, and then when it gets all the way to the right, you're lifted, you're sailing the highest angle, you're on the ley line, you're going super fast to the mark and you look like you've just won by like pure genius, right? But then there's the other times where you're exactly in the position that I just described before, where you're here, you're looking really great, you tack over, you look down and you're lifted, you're gonna cross all these boats, and then it shifts more and more and more to the left, and now all of a sudden you're ducking 30 boats when you thought you were about to beat all of them. And then you're a zero, right? So you're either a hero or a zero. We don't want to play zero or hero games. We want to play, I have a plan, and my plan is to stay inside the ley lines and use the shifts to my advantage, right? So if you were here, right, tacking, sailing to the left, taking that little shift, but not going all the way to one end of the race course. The last little topic I'll talk about is one thing that I started to work on a lot more last 2018, like my last super competitive laser sailing, and that's what I call micro gains. So this is requisite of good tacks. You don't have to have great tacks, but you have to be really consistent in that you don't completely stop your boat when you tack, and it's using any little shift that you have, right? So let's say that, let's say there's a mark here, and this is what I tried to do a lot last weekend when I was behind, and just picking off one boat at a time is how I kind of move up from the back of the pack to the top of the pack, is just by playing one boat, sailing and passing that boat, then going to the next boat, sailing, passing that boat, just one boat at a time. So let's say that we're coming from the left side of the course. We're down here, right? So if we tack, this guy's clearly in front of us, right? If we tack, we're most likely going to duck him. So the first thing that you want to think about is sailing with absolute speed. Fast, 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 fast. It's okay to sail a little bit lower, right? A little bit low in speed, right? Low in fast, right? Meaning that you're not pinching, you're not sailing a super high angle, you're not sailing a perfectly straight angle. You're a little bit below just to give your boat a little bit more speed, get on like a more of a reaching angle, right? And what your goal to do here is either stay the same or get a little bit more in front. But you're just trying to be as patient as possible. You're waiting for any little tiny shift that comes in your favor. So in this case, if it shifts right a little tiny bit, right, maybe you even get a puff that's just for you, right? So if you have a puff and it comes, puffs always fan out, right? So if you get a puff and you're on this side of the puff and you get the right little shift out of that puff, then the thing is to use that little micro gain, tack, but you're clearly not, he's crossing you. You're clearly not going to beat him, right? But the goal is to get out in front, tack when you get a tiny little shift, and then tack right before you get in his bad air zone. So if you wanted to get as close as possible to him, that might look something like this, where you tack here, right? So you're not crossing him. If you kept going, you would have ducked him, but this is his bad air zone. Like that, right? That's his bad air zone, and you just kind of tack right on the outside of his bad air zone. Just kind of keep in touch, right? So now what this does is two things, and this is how you should think about sailing for all big fleets, small fleets, boat on boat, right? Is getting as close to a pack of boats, close to a boat, for the reason that, one, you're closer to him, right? So now if you go all the way to the mark, and you are really fast downwind, maybe he's not so fast downwind, you have a much better chance of beating him, right? Maybe it's a reach, you're much faster on a reach, he's not, right? So it's much closer so that you can cover him on the downwind, a whole bunch of different things, right? But now what you get is you are much closer, so if he gets a really big left shift, right? So let's say we were on that oscillating breeze type, okay? We know that we are right in the middle, right? Let's say it's going to the left. So it's going to this one next, and then this, so let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's at 3, going to 2, right? Going to 1, really clocking left, and then it's going to start to come back right. But we got 5 minutes. So 5 minutes. So 3, that's 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, right? 4 minutes. Do you have enough time to wait 6 minutes or whatever it is for it to get all the way to the right? Probably not. In the short courses that we're sailing, you got to act now and you got to act decisively, right? So by tacking and putting yourself close to here, if you stayed down here and just kind of waited for a shift, then when he gets this big left shift, he's just going to lift off and point higher, sail faster, right? He's going to get much farther away from you, as opposed to taking a tiny little shift, whatever you get, right, and sailing right outside of his bad air zone, tacking, and then when he gets that left shift, you're right next to him, and he's not going to lift up so far away. Or vice versa, let's say it's going the other way. You got a right shift, you come right in here, right? Now, if it was like this before, he has all this space to come down, aim really low, really fast, and potentially sail over you, right? Potentially roll you. If you sail and tack right up next to him, then he doesn't have that much space, right? Because if he does it wrong and messes up by a little tiny bit, then you're going to shoot out and you're going to be right here, and then he's going to be lee bow and you beat him to the mark, right?
So Caleb, on that, what when do tacks detract and when do tacks add? Like what wind speed?
Great question. So the answer is wind speed like today is great for tacks, right? Because you don't have, so what we're looking for in terms of tacks, right, and stopping a boat is heel. The more heel you have throughout a tack, the slower you're gonna go, right? Your dagger board's not in the water, not pushing you straight. You have nothing in the water keeping you moving forward, so you're just gonna slide sideways. And if you're really heeled over, you're just gonna stop. So you're looking for the breeze condition that allows you to cross the boat without the boat heeling over a big amount, right? So the answer is anything under 8 knots is great to do this in. If it's really, really wavy and swelly or whatever condition you're sailing in, those are terrible times to tack the boat, right? The bigger the waves, the more your bow is going to slap down, the more your boat's going to slow down, right? So times not to tack are extremely heavy breeze, extremely wavy conditions, right? So sometimes, like in Annapolis, for example, or any high traffic area, if you sail there where there's a lot of boats going in and out and like you're racing, right, you're going to get all these waves and it's going to turn into like a blender, and it's going to be really frustrating. And anytime you try to tack in that blender or all those big waves and whatever, then you're just going to stop your boat every single time. So the thing for that condition is just focus more on speed, right, and not do that. But this move or this micro gains is for 8 knots and under, flat water, or times where you tack where you're not feeling like your boat's super heeled over. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so the idea is, so in other words, roll tacking, when you're into kind of powered roll tacking, then you're actually gaining on your tacks, as opposed to there's some point where it becomes kind of neutral. It's not a gain or a loss. You're just kind of...
Exactly. So if you want to think about it like more technical, then whatever, so I'm not a physics guy, but whatever the force is that you're enacting on the boat, so let's say you do a big roll tack and acceleration or whatever, there's a point where you can create that wind speed by flattening your boat and pushing the sail through the wind, right? Whether it's, say it's 1 knot and you do a big roll tack or a big jibe, then the speed you're moving the sail through could be like 6 knots, 8 knots, whatever, just of power pushing you forward. If you already have that, or whatever the force that you're enacting to flatten the boat is greater than whatever you can produce, like say you create 8 knots of flattening force, right, with the sail moving through the wind. If there's 12 knots pushing the sail over, you can't flatten that, and you're actually just going to be fighting against it. So the more like heel you give the boat to fight against that, the harder it's going to be, the more you're fighting the boat, and the slower you're going to go. Okay, so any questions on that strategical aspect of it?
Can I just add a little something to
Absolutely.
your windward? Just about, he was talking about the ley lines here. So, you know, as the wind shifts, those ley lines shift, right? And if it goes the other way, so the ones that are relevant are the set that's going to be at the mark when you're trying to go around it. And so trying to guess which one it's going to be by sailing way out here from really far away, it could go through 3 sets of ley lines by the time you actually get there. So that's why it's not such a good idea to bang a corner, as they call it, way far away. Do your tacking, get your tacking so good that tacking is not really an obstruction to your progress towards the mark. Do it up the middle so that when you get here, actually the zone is what you're really aiming for. Because by the time you get to the zone, you're pretty well committed to what order you're going around that buoy, which order the boats enter that zone. Okay? And then last week, you were talking about the influence of the current on that ley line. So your wind ley line is here. But because there's current traveling in this direction, your true ley line is actually here. You want to tack here because the current's going to push you over to here by the time you get to the mark. So don't think of just the wind ley line. This is actually the true ley line, the one that includes the current with it. So that's what I wanted to add.
Great addition.
Yeah.
So last thing I want to just quickly talk about, which I don't think we'll see today, probably not, but this is like the hardest breeze condition ever to identify and sail in is a persistent shift, right? You're not sure if it's going to be oscillating, if it's going to come back, if it's just a random shift, if it's a puff, whatever, right? So the hardest thing to identify is a persistent shift. If you have been in a race before, like you had, you're in a 3-race day, like the first race it just went all the way to the right and then came back a little bit to the left at the top, then you're going to think, okay, it's just kind of oscillating. And then the second race goes all the way to the right and then comes back a little bit to the left at the top. Maybe it's more of a persistent shift, and by the third race, or the last race of the day, it goes all the way to the right, and then you're like, oh, okay, it's a persistent shift. So the hardest thing is to identify when it actually is a persistent shift or when it's just oscillating really far to one side, really far back. And this is the last topic I'll talk about, and then we'll hit the water, which is how to deal with a persistent shift. So this kind of comes exactly like the scenario I was talking about before, right off the start, left side, right? And that comes down to, if it's a persistent shift, depending on whatever side it is, I have seen people in a 130 boat fleet, right, where there's been, I don't know, like 50 boats up here and then 20 boats down here, right? And all these guys at the start of the race, right, if it's the right side, it's going right, breeze is going to the right, then they're just going to be gaining. It'll be really hard to beat them, right? If it's a really long race course, then you have time on your side to kind of get distance to one side, take advantage of a right shift as opposed to staying on the left side waiting in a short course, right? But the answer in a persistent breeze is knowing when to tack and dock every single boat in the fleet, right? So there's been situations where, let's say we just had a bunch of boats like this, just a whole mess of boats, right? And it persistently shifts to the right side of the course, right? All the people who think it's going to be oscillating and had that little bit of luck at the, let's say the first race, and it came back to the left a little bit, all those people who had that little bit of luck are going to be grouped on, like, say this half of the race course because they think it's going to be going left. All the people who got lucky on the right are going to be on the right side. if you can tell that it's a persistent shift, meaning that you know it's going to just keep clocking to one direction and hold that direction. Let's say we're this boat, then instead of, oh, I'm already on the left side, I have to suck it up and kind of go to the left side, you're actually just going to lose a lot more, as opposed to tacking, ducking really early, going beneath every single boat in the fleet, and then tacking back the farthest right boat. And in some cases, I think I was this boat right here, and this guy. So this is a story. This is the North Americans, I think in Alamitos Bay, whatever, where it was a really persistent shift to the right. This guy was Charlie Buckingham, who the U.S. rep, right? Didn't have a great start. I think someone hit him or something, right? And it was persistent shift, but not many people like understood that. Not many people recognized it. And I was in this group of boats here that was like, okay, I did really well on the left last time. I'm just gonna kind of move to the left. And I watched him. I was like, oh, sweet, I'm gonna beat him this race. He tacked, ducked every single boat. Looked like when he tacked back over here, last by a long shot. And then it just kept shifting right, shifting right, shifting right, shifting right, and I think he rounded the mark in third or something like that, right? So he went from being 70th at the start to being third around the top mark, just because he was able to recognize a persistent shift, go all the way to the right side, utilize all the shifts that came to him, and then just kind of get to the right side at the right time, be lifted all the way to the mark. So the little lesson there is, when you recognize a persistent shift, especially in a practice regatta, Sunday series, some place where it's, you're just sailing for fun, not like super high level of competition, like you're not at a world championships or an Olympics or whatever, right? Practice that. Have an idea, have a plan, say it's going to the right, just tack. Own your plan, duck every single boat, go out to the right. If it works out, great. Then you've just identified a persistent shift, and that's one indicator to help you identify the next one. If it doesn't, oh well, you had an idea, you practiced it. So my last little tidbit, which I'll leave, is that whenever you race, always have a plan, stick to your plan, and if it doesn't work out, that's fine, but have a plan. Always have a plan. At the start, do your homework, say, it's going to the right, it's going to the left. Okay, it was going to the right a little bit more. The current is pushing us down a little bit coming from the right side of the course. My plan is going to be start at the boat, get the right shifts, be the most right boat, and protect and own the right side all the way up the course. If that doesn't work out, that's okay, as long as you had a plan, right? You can change your plan halfway up the race course if you need to. You don't want to change the plan so much where I'm on the right side, oh, I'm going to go all the way to the left side now, right? Your plan would be, I'm on the right side, I'm going to come back a little bit more to the left, but still stay on the right, right? So have a plan. Any questions?
I have a rules question.
Yeah.
So you're at the windward mark, and you've got a freight train of starboard tackers, and you're within the 3 boat length circle, and a boat comes in on port and tacks in front of you, and you tap that boat's transom.
Okay, so
The starboard tack boat hits the port tackers.
Hits the port
After the port
tacker
tacker
after
is
it's tacked.
And then
It's
he-
completed its tack.
Yeah.
so let's see. So what you're saying is that you are already in the 3 boat length circle,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so you're already in the 3 boat length circle. You have a port tacker coming in like here, right?
Right.
Now, did you hit his transom
After-
while he was tacking, or did he complete
After
his
he
tack?
tacked. After
After
he
he
tacked.
completed his tack. Okay, so the rule is, I think 18.2 or 3. I can't remember, 18 points or whatever, but the rule is that whenever someone tacks inside the 3 boat length circle, then that boat cannot alter the other boat's proper course, right? So your proper course is to go directly to the windward
That
mark.
boat can't make the starboard tack boat sail above close haul.
Close hauled, yeah.
That's it. A close haul course may not be their proper course. If they make them sail above close hauled, then they fouled that boat. Now, I think the description, that the incidents that you're describing doesn't necessarily matter if you're in the zone or not. If you tack in front of another boat and that boat hits you in the back, who's at fault there? Did you tack too close? Did you not give that boat room to keep clear? Okay, he becomes the overtaking boat from clear astern. He needs to keep clear. But if you didn't give him time and room to do that,
Well,
Then-
at the windward
then-
mark,
then
it's
you're
never that
at
clear.
fault.
At the windward mark, you're slamming in.
So
well, you could be doing the same thing in the middle of the race course.
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
my answer to that is, in the situations I've been in, if I'm the port boat and I tack, and as soon as I complete my tack, if someone hits me on my transom, then generally they're at fault. But let's say that they tack and you have to head above your close hauled course or your proper course to the mark, right? Then they're at fault because now they've altered your course, right? If you hit them, then sometimes they're at fault because they've altered your course, right? But let's say, right, so here's another situation where if they tack in here, this other person tacks right in here, right? They have room to round that mark as long as they do not head you above a close hauled course or proper course is what it's defined as. And proper course is your fastest angle to the mark, right?
Right, but fastest angle to the mark may be below close hauled.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
If that starboard tack boat has overstood,
you can take him to
then
close
you
haul.
can do that. And if he needs to go head up to avoid you, but hasn't gone above close hauled, then you haven't fouled him.
Okay.
But if he is on a close hauled course and he's coming in, and in order to avoid hitting you in the stern, he has to head up, well, then you have made him go above close hauled, and therefore you're at fault.
I'm going to just say we can revisit more detail of rules questions as time to get on the water. I just want to say thank you very much, Caleb.